Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here today. We plan to have good weather for you, and we're so glad.
Closer. Closer to your mouth.
And we're so happy you're here. And as I was saying about the weather, I actually have control over a few things on this side, but not the other side. So we arranged that for you today. We're glad to see you all here. You just heard the Homer Brass playing one of Sousa's marches, and you all have programs. You all have something that's a green folder. Raise your hand if you don't. And every second person has music, words, music that we'll be singing today. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't tell you there's going to be a sing-along. But you like to sing, right? Yeah. Do you like music? Great. Okay. My name is Matilda Jocelyn Gage. And there goes the declaration. Okay, I found somebody who knows how to hold paper. Okay. My name is Matilda Jocelyn Gage. It is a great pleasure to welcome you to my home on this glorious day, celebrating the birth of our great nation, the 4th of July, 2012. I was born 1 year after the opening of the Erie Canal in 1826 to the abolitionist parents in Cicero, a station on the Underground Railroad. The greatest abolitionist speakers of the time visited our home, and I was encouraged to listen to what they had to say and to offer my comments, unheard of at the time, especially for one of my gender, and even more especially for a child. My parents believed in equality for all, no matter what gender, what color our skin, what religion. My father, a doctor and founder of the Liberty Abolitionist Party, taught me everything he knew. I too hoped to be a doctor, but was denied admission to Geneva Medical College. Why? Why was I denied admission? You got it. I was born female. And you know, somebody about 4 years later followed me to Geneva Medical College, and what was her name? Elizabeth Blackwell. And she graduated at the top of her class. And the professors immediately had a meeting. And what did they decide? We can't have this. A woman better than we are. We've been telling everybody that her brain is smaller, so therefore she's dumber. And they closed the doors to women who wished to be doctors thereafter. I married a wonderful man, Henry Hill Gage, who encouraged my writing and speaking in the causes of freedom for slaves, equal rights for all peoples, including women and people of color, the importance of our government honoring the United States treaties made with Native Americans, the importance of religious freedom for all, and for the separation of church and state, the latter two so fervently believed in by our nation's founders, and remembering that so many first emigrated to America seeking religious freedom. My articles on these topics were published throughout the United States in newspapers such as the New York Tribune, the New York Evening Post, in magazines such as the Atlantic Monthly. I traveled throughout the land giving speeches on these topics. This, Henry's and my home, was one of only 2 stations on the Underground Railroad in this area. The penalty for harboring each freedom taker was 6 months in prison, and in today's money, the equivalent of $23,000. And that was for each escaping slave. Very involved in helping to achieve equal rights for women, I was a founder and a president, as were my friends and colleagues Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony of the National Women's Suffrage Association. I was editor-in-chief of its newspaper and later of my own newspaper. Together, Mrs. Stanton and I wrote the first 3 volumes of the history of women's suffrage. I also wrote monographs, such as my research that I carried out in the U.S. Patent Office in Washington, D.C. about women inventors, and other books available today at the Gage gift shop, which is very much cooler than out here. I'm told we have something wonderful that's just been invented called air conditioning. Is that true? Oh, it was invented longer ago? Okay, well, today my home has not only been historically restored, but also is a center for dialogue on topics of great importance to today and of my time. Each of the 5 rooms downstairs representing and explaining each of the causes for which I strove. Haudenosaunee, also known as Iroquois rights, women's rights, the Underground Railroad and abolition, religious freedom, and a nod in the direction of the utopian matriarchal society, that land of Oz, described by my son-in-law, L. Frank Baum, who I encouraged to write in what came to be 14 volumes on the land of Oz and its people. You are invited to express your opinions today by writing on my walls. I won't tell you any more. You'll have to find out for yourselves, because you're going to be invited for a tour also after we're done with the program. So take a tour today and do what the signs say. Try me. Play my 1845 piano. Sit at my desk. Write me a note. Read one of my letters. Try my stereoscope. And more. How many of you always wanted to try a stereoscope? 3D images of 2 photographs? You wonder why you may not have heard about me before. How many of you have heard about me? My goodness gracious, what an informed crowd. This is wonderful. Okay, that's all for today. Okay, no. You may wonder, over there at the end, why you had not heard of me before. I, as many women, then and now, was written out of history. But it's not too late for you to hear the causes for which I strove, some of which the Gage Center still strives today, and for you, too, can join us in daring to seek liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for our national anthem, the Star-Spangled Banner.
Whose
professional flag maker, Mary Young Pickersgill, was born in 1776 in Philadelphia, to another noted flag maker, Rebecca Young, who made many flags for the American Revolution and also for the early years of our nation. Major George Armstrong, commandant of the star-shaped Fort McHenry, guarding the Baltimore Harbor in preparation for the eventual attack by the British in the War of 1812, wrote in 1813, quote, "It is my desire to have a flag so large that the British will have no difficulty seeing it from a distance," end quote. This professional flag maker, Mary Pickersgill, did. In the making of a huge flag, 30 feet by 42 feet, weighing 50 pounds, requiring 400 yards of fabric, and having 15 stripes and 15 stars, the American flag of that time, from 1795 to 1818, had 15 stars and 15 stripes. Actually, it wasn't until 1912, after I went over to the other side, that Congress said, okay, we got to codify these flags. No more flamboyant decorations. I like it. This flag over here was the flag from 1861 to 1863. I made a copy of it, hung it on my porch throughout the entire Civil War, and this was the most popular shape and configuration of a flag in the entire 19th century. All they did was add stars. And you can see this flag today, my flag, at the Onondaga Historical Association. Her daughter Carolyn, Mary's daughter Carolyn, who helped her mother, later wrote that her mother, Mary Pickersgill, had the flag, quote, fastened in the most secure manner to prevent its being torn away by cannonballs. The wisdom of her precaution was shown during the engagement on September 14, 1814. Many shots piercing the flag, but the flag still remained firm to the staff. And Francis Scott Key mentions this, that it still flew. And if this hadn't been a good flag, and it hadn't been made by Mary, today we would have had no Star-Spangled Banner. I'm having trouble. Did you know that Francis Scott Key was an ancestor of F. Scott Fitzgerald? What was his first name? Francis Scott Fitzgerald. You can visit the home today of Mary Pickersgill, which she herself purchased, lived in, near the Baltimore Harbor, called the Flag House. The newly restored Star-Spangled Banner in its entirety is on view in the National Museum of Natural History in Washington, D.C. today. Would those of you who would like to participate in the reading of the Declaration of the Rights of the Women of the United States, first read under threat of arrest in Philadelphia, 4th of July, 1876, on the steps of Liberty Hall, please rise. I need 15 people. While we're arranging that, today you are invited to witness and take part in a historic event, the shared reading of the Declaration of the Rights of Women of the United States, first read under threat of arrest, as I said, in Liberty Square in Philadelphia. As a founder and president of the National Women's Suffrage Association, the NWSA, I propose to our organization that Elizabeth Cady Stanton and I write a document the reading at the official celebration of our nation's centennial on the 4th of July, 1876 in Philadelphia. We, the National Women's Suffrage Association, wrote early to the presiding officer of our proposal, but he said the proposed platform and program was already set, and in fact, there would be no women allowed on the podium, let alone allowed to speak at this, our most sacred event. As Mrs. Stanton and I later wrote in the history of women's suffrage, quote, "Our work was not for ourselves alone, nor for the present. Our work was for all the posterity that we had in our hands, and we determined to place on record for our daughters in 1976 the fact that their mothers of 1876 had asserted their equality of rights and impeached the government of that day for its injustice towards women, thus taking a grander step towards freedom that was ever taken before. We would leave one right remembrance for the women of the next centennial," end quote. Threatened with arrest, Mrs. Stanton and I wrote our document anyway. Undaunted, I carried the declaration up the stairs to the official podium with several other women. I handed the declaration to my colleague and friend, Susan B. Anthony, who in turn handed it to the acting vice president, who took it in his hands, and thus it became part of the official record. We then left the podium, and thus it became part of the record, as I said, and we strode through the crowd, tossing printed copies of the declaration to everyone, to the eager crowd who wanted to see this. Mounting the stairs of the podium for the musicians, located in front of Liberty Hall, I'll never know why the official podium was not anywhere near Liberty Hall. So it was meant to be that we would be there. Anyway, Miss Anthony read our declaration to the welcoming crowd. And this, our document, the Declaration of the Rights of Women of the United States, we will read today portions of the Declaration in the interest of time, but facsimile copies of my books and of the Declaration, books about me, will be in the air-conditioned Gage gift gallery today. While the nation is buoyant with patriotism, and all hearts are attuned to praise, it is with sorrow we come to strike the one discordant blow on this 100th anniversary of our country's birth. Our faith is firm and unwavering in the broad principles of human rights proclaimed in 1776, not only as abstract truths, but as the cornerstones of a republic.
Yet we cannot forget, even in this glad hour, that while all men of every race and clime and condition have been invested with the full rights of citizenship under our hospitable United States of America flag, all women still suffer the degradation of disenfranchisement.
The history of our country these past 100 years has been a series of assumptions and usurpations of power over women, in direct opposition to the principles of just government, acknowledged by the United States as its foundations.
These rights are, first, the natural rights of each individual. Second, political rights. Third, the rights of the Fourth,
act of the legislature declaring a person or group of persons guilty of some crime, punishing them without benefit of a judicial trial.
Bills of attainder have been passed by the introduction of the word "may" into all of the state constitutions, denying to women the right of suffrage and thereby making being female a crime, an exercise of power clearly forbidden in Article 1, Sections 9 and 10 of the United States Constitution.
The writ of habeas corpus, the only protection against arbitrary actions and judgments, all forms of unjust imprisonment, which the Constitution declares that these rights, quote, shall not be suspended, except in cases of rebellion or invasion, when the public safety demands it.
Taxation without representation, the immediate cause of the Revolutionary War of the colonies against Great Britain, is one of the grievous wrongs that the women of this country have suffered during the first 100 years of our republic.
We believe in honesty. We are taxed to support.
We are taxed to support a dangerous army of civilians, buying and selling the offices of government, and sacrificing the best interests of the people. And moreover, we are taxed to support the very legislators and judges who make laws and render decisions adverse to women. And for refusing to pay unjust taxes, the houses, lands, bonds, and stocks of women have been seized and sold.
Unequal codes for men and women, held by law as a perpetual minor, incapable of self-protection. Even in the industries of the world, woman is denied equality of rights. The fact of being female, not the quantity nor the quality of her work, in most cases decides the pay and position.
Even today, in this year of 2012, for every dollar men earn, women earn only 77 cents. Over the course of a lifetime for a woman, this comes to at least $400,000 loss of income.
Laws catering to man's vices have created two codes of morals, in which penalties are graded according to the political status of the offender. Under such laws, women are fined and imprisoned. Under the pretense of regulating public morals, police officers seizing the occupants of disreputable houses march the women in platoons to prison, while the men, the partners in their guilt, go free.
Unfortunately, this also is true today in the year 2012.
The judiciary above the nation has proved itself to be but the echo of the party in power by upholding and enforcing laws that are opposed to the spirit and the letter of the Constitution. When the slave power was dominant, the Supreme Court decided that a black man was not a citizen because he had not the right to vote. And when the Constitution
Constitution was so amended to make all personal citizens, the same high tribunal decided that a woman, though a citizen, had not the right to vote. Such vacillating interpretations of constitutional law unsettle our faith in the judicial authority and undermine the liberties of the whole people.
These articles of impeachment against our rulers, we now submit to the impartial judgment of the people. To all these wrongs and oppressions, woman has not submitted in silence and resignation. From the beginning of this 100 years, when Abigail Adams, the wife of one president and the mother of another president, said, quote, "We will not hold ourselves bound to obey laws in which we have no voice or representation." End quote. Until now, women's discontent has been steadily increasing, culminating nearly 30 years ago in a simultaneous movement among the women of the nation demanding the right of suffrage.
In making our just demands, a higher motive than the pride of gender inspires us. We feel that national safety and stability depend on the complete recognition of the broad principles of our government. Women's degraded, helpless position is the weak point in our institutions today, a disturbing force everywhere, severing family ties, filling our prisons with criminals, our cities with drunkenness and prostitution, our homes with disease and death.
It was the boast of the founders of the Republic that the rights for which they contended were the rights of human nature. If these rights are ignored in the case of one half of the people,
Nay, today in 2012, in the case of more than one half of the people,
then the nation is surely preparing for its downfall. Governments try themselves. The recognition of a governing and a governed class is incompatible with the first principles of freedom.
Woman has not been a heedless spectator of the events of this century, not a dull listener to the grand arguments for the equal rights of all humanity. From the earliest history of our country, woman has shown equal devotion with man to the cause of freedom and has stood firmly by his side in its defense. Together, they have made this country what it is. Women's health, thought, and labor have cemented the stones of every monument, and man has ruled. Indeed, is not liberty depicted as a woman? And now, at the close of 100 years, as the hour hand of the great clock that marks the centuries points to 1876, yea, even to the year 2012, we declare our faith in the principles of self-government, our full equality with man in natural rights, that woman was made first for her own happiness, with the absolute right to herself and to all the opportunities and advantages life affords for her complete development. And we deny that dogma of the centuries incorporated into the codes of nations, that woman was made for man, her best interests in all cases to be sacrificed to his will. We ask of our rulers at this hour no special favors, no special privileges. We ask justice. We ask equality. We ask that all the civil and political rights that belong to citizens of the United States of America be guaranteed to us and to our daughters forever. Thank you. Section 1. Equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex.
Section 2, the Congress shall have the power to enforce, by appropriate legislation, the provisions of this article. This amendment shall take effect 2 years after the date of ratification. How many of you know what I just read? What did I read? The Equal Rights Amendment. Not for women alone. It's for men and women. And next year we'll have some men read. I'm sorry I didn't make that clear that everybody was welcome, but you all are. What you have now heard, as I said, is the amendment to the United States Constitution that would provide a fundamental legal remedy against sex discrimination for both men and women citizens of the United States of America. The amendment for equal rights for men and women would guarantee that the rights affirmed by the U.S. Constitution are held equally by all citizens of the United States of America without regard to gender. What you have just heard in its entirety is for both men and women and would send a strong preemptive message that the United States Constitution has zero tolerance for sex discrimination under the law. Every year since 1923, when Alice Paul, a lawyer, first wrote this amendment, it has been introduced to the U.S. Congress. So far, 35 states have ratified this amendment for equality of its citizens. So far, we only need 3 more states to make this a full amendment of the Constitution of the United States of America. Please join with me in singing our battle hymn of the suffragists. To thank those Gage volunteers, friends, all of you here today, our wonderful but tiny Gage staff, Sally Roche Wagner, Pat Campany, and Teresa Hudson, our soprano soloist, Homer High School senior Lucia Helgren, trumpeter Ralph Dudgeon, French hornist Terry Martins, Terry White of the Homer Brass for making possible this 4th of July celebration. You are now invited to join me for tours of my house, which, as I mentioned, has something wonderful called air conditioning. And then to refreshments of iced tea, ice cold lemonade, strawberry shortcake on the back lawn, where also are the 19th century toys for everyone to try. I want to try the stilts. Follow now the Spirit of 76 flag to today's further openings. Thank you all, everyone. That means all of you. You are my friends, aren't you? Okay. Where are we going? Into the house. Air conditioned. Okay. Now you can find